Hey everyone, I'm Stephanie, and I believe that all readers should read children's literature, especially adults. So that's what we do on the KidLit Love podcast. We celebrate all things children's literature, picture books, early readers, middle grade, and young adult novels too. Whether you're an adult reading to your inner child or connecting the young readers in your lives with fantastic books, you've come to the right place. Each week, we'll talk to a different children's literature author and discuss their books, their hopes and dreams for readers, their writing process, and much, much more. So, grab a notebook to build your TBR, and let's get to today's episode of KidLit Love. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the KidLit Love podcast. I'm Stephanie Affinito, your KidLit loving host, inviting you back to another bookish conversation with a children's literature author. Today, I'm talking with Saadia Faruqi. Saadia is a well-loved middle grade author with treasured books like A Place at the Table, 1,000 Questions, and Yusuf Azim is Not a Hero. She's also the author of early reader series like Yasmin and Ali the Great. You likely know and love those two. She's here today to talk about her newest middle grade release, The Strongest Heart. This book is a poignant exploration of mental illness and the impact it can have on families, along with the love and hope it takes to begin telling a different tale. It's beautiful, it's emotional, it's so needed, and I cannot wait. I'm just so honored to be able to talk about it with Saadia. So we're going to get right to the episode. Saadia, welcome to KidLit Love. I am so glad you're here today.
Thank you. I'm happy that we got a chance to talk, and it seems like you already like The Strongest Heart, so you're like now my favorite person.
We're going to choose much different adjectives than like later on, and I will be even more of your favorite person at that point because I did love this book. But before we get there, before we get talking about the book, I would love for you to start with you. I name dropped some of the books that listeners likely already know and love in the introduction,
Yeah.
and I'd love if you'd give us your scoop. Tell us a bit about you and your work you do, and of course, your books and your journey through KidLit.
Yeah, that's you said a lot already. I felt like I would have name dropped the same books because a lot of people do know those. I've been writing children's stories for the last 6, 7 years. I used to write for adults before that, but children's fiction specifically is something that I found was really my sweet spot in terms of what I could do, what I could bring to the table, something different, and still tell a good story and entertain people and also kind of teach them a little bit along the way without making them realize that they learned something, hopefully. I'm an immigrant. I came to the US from Pakistan, which is where I was born, and I lived my childhood and teenage years there. I came to the US at the age of 22, and so I kind of built my life anew, which it is as difficult as people have talk about. But gratefully, thankfully, I already knew English, and I was a big lover of reading and writing and communicating in English. I think that was one big barrier that I didn't have, and immediately I kind of just got into my life and had kids. And once I had kids, I realized that they did not have any books where they could see themselves. And I did not have that problem growing up because I grew up in a country where everybody looked like me. And my children, who are first generation Muslim American, South Asian American, brown kids, when they were growing up, there were no books where they could see themselves on the cover or in the pages or in any positive light. And I did not I just felt that that wasn't right. And so that is when my writing career kind of took off in the space. I wrote the first Yasmin book, not really thinking that it would get the kind of excitement and acclaim that it ended up getting. I was blown away, but it kind of just gave me the taste for um, it helped me realize that our stories were also needed, and also not just needed but would be welcomed. There's a difference, because something could be needed but then not commercially viable. But I'm so grateful to all my publishers who took a chance on me, especially Capstone, which is the one that puts out the Yasmin books, because they were the first ones who said, we want more Yasmin books, can you write more of these stories? And of course I said yes. um, and as my kids got older and they started elementary school and then middle school, I saw them come home with all these stories about, the good, the bad, the ugly, everything that goes on. And then so I entered the middle grade space as well. And now I have a lot of books. The Strongest Heart, which we're going to talk about today, and which is coming out on March 4th, is my 54th book. So I've been busy with a lot of different kind of offerings in the early reader space, like you said, Yasmin, and then there's a spin-off, Ali the Great. The middle grade novels that I have, of course, have a graphic novel, Saving Sunshine, that was a finalist for the Eisner Award. That is all the illustrator and her brilliance, nothing to do with me, but I'm proud of it because I wrote it. Um, and yeah, picture books, chapter books, all across the board. So I am excited to talk more about anything else you want to ask me about those books. But I feel like this is like me in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Me and my work in a nutshell.
54 books in a nutshell.
Yeah, I can go on and on, but that's not that's for readers to kind of find those
Yeah.
what speaks to them
Yeah.
uh uh, better than something else.
Yeah. And I always love that when I find a book, when I find an author, and then I realize that there is this vast backlist that perhaps I didn't know about. It's
Yeah.
such an exciting feeling as a reader that you don't have to set them down yet. There is so much more to go through. And that certainly qualifies you in that in that category with that many books. Such a
Yeah,
beautiful
yeah.
career.
I'll tell you, just this morning, I was going through some books and I picked up 1,000 Questions, which is my first middle grade novel that got published in 2020. It was like a COVID book, a pandemic book.
Mhm.
And I opened it and I said, probably I'm going to cringe at this because it's been so long and I've grown as a writer. I've written so many more books, and every book that you write as a writer, you kind of improve a little bit more or less. But I read it and I was like, "Oh yeah, I wrote that. That's pretty good. It's not cringy. It's cool.
That's
People
right.
could still read it."
Now, I don't know how old your children are now, but I know with my own children, are they proud? Like, are they excited to know that your desire for them to have themselves be seen in books really launched this children's literature space? What do they think of all of it?
My kids are teenagers. My son is in college. He's his own adult person now, which is so weird to me.
I know, I
And does
know,
not
I
live at home. My daughter is in high school in 10th grade. And in case you don't know, Yasmin is actually based on my daughter, as she was actually literally a big copy of her when she was very little, which she does not like the fact that my whole this character and these stories are based on her. She's like, what did you do to me? Uh, I mean, she's fine with it, but I think they're proud. It's for kids. No, if you talk to anybody who's got a public following, or I'm not a celebrity, but any major celebrity, their kids don't think of them that way.
Yeah,
They're just regular, the same mom who's always
yeah,
telling me to clean my room and not letting me go out and stay out till midnight, etc., etc.
yeah,
So I feel like they are proud. They share. I'm a big believer in celebrating every small thing for everybody, not just myself. And you have to advocate for yourself. So every time I get a star review, or I get some nomination, or I get a new book coming out, we always do a little dinner at somewhere, and we just like, this is my achievement, and we do that for our kids too. So
yeah, yeah.
um I think they're proud. I mean, they're not giving me an award anytime soon, but
Yeah, kids are humbling, aren't they? Teenagers are
which is
humbling.
fine. Yeah, which is fine. I don't I don't I don't write for them per se. I in terms of I don't write for their appreciation because or anybody's, but I think that readers that you are really looking to are just are a little bit less, in your face and in your house all the time than your own kids.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I love how you mentioned that you celebrate everything because, we're going to talk about the strongest heart today. And I feel like I just found a little piece of you in a piece of a character in that book who, even though there are lots of things going on that might drag down the smile and drag down emotion wise, she is there cheering herself, cheering people on, having that smile, which was something that I really took away from the book. I'm kind of jumping ahead of myself, but I feel like now I'm looking at the story and I can see little pieces in there.
As a writer, you're always leaving little pieces of yourself. I mean,
Yeah,
when you're creating all these characters, and can you imagine if you have 54 books and every book has multiple characters,
right.
you're taking from real life, even if it's fiction, and there are other people. Yesterday my husband was reading uh, unpublished, my notes for my next graphic novel, and he goes, "Oh, this is me. You put me in there. I don't like that." I'm like, "It's not really you, but yeah, some of these things that you say kind of resonate." And then he's like, "Oh, but this is, you know, you do that as a writer. That's where you get your inspiration from."
Yeah.
Um, and when, especially yourself, I don't think I do it deliberately at all. I don't think any writer does, but yeah, what your beliefs are, what your feelings are, what your emotions are, what your practices are in daily life, they do end up kind of bleeding into the page.
Yeah.
And this book is my most personal one, so why not? I feel like I just kind of tore open my heart and poured it all there anyway, so
Yeah.
that's not surprising.
And readers feel it. I like the book was just filled with emotion that the reader just truly, this reader especially, truly experienced. So let's talk about it specifically.
Mhm.
The Strongest Heart, you mentioned, um, it was out March 4th because our episode is releasing a little bit after that. Give listeners a little overview of the book. We try not to give spoilers, but
Yeah.
just an overview and the inspiration behind book number 54.
The Strongest Heart is a middle grade novel, upper middle grade novel. It's about a 13-year-old boy, Mohammed. He goes by Mo. And the start of the story is about him and his dad moving to Houston, Texas, where I live, and almost all my books are set there anyway. From New York City, where they used to live, and they are now going to live with his aunt, who is his dad's mom, and her son Ryan, who's obviously Mo's cousin and the same age. Mo is quote unquote bad boy. He's not really a bad boy, but he acts like a bad boy. He is very much disillusioned with life, especially his own parents. He almost kind of hates them, can't stand them. Is very sad about his own life and his family situation. His dad, as we find out as you read the book, kind of revealed. It's not a spoiler because
No, I
it's kind
get.
of very early on you realize, and he tells you that his father has schizophrenia, which is a very severe kind of mental illness, and his mom is this genius scientist kind of person who has left them to go on a fellowship to Greece to work in refugee camps, and everybody is very proud of her, but this means that she has left Mo alone with who he calls the monster,
Mhm.
and has to deal with it and all that comes with living with a very severely mentally ill person. Um, and now he's a new place, a new city, a new house, a new school. The book has a lot of emotion, a lot of depth, and a lot of difficult passages, I think, to read, and so there's a lot of, those have been broken up by stories, which are folk tales from South Asian culture. Mo loves reading and telling other people these stories. It's something that he's found as a coping mechanism, almost to kind of take himself away mentally and emotionally from his life. And you, as the reader, get to take breaks whenever something is happening, which may not be all that, fun and lovely, or anything that he's going through that he has to kind of cope with mentally, even when there's a crush that he finds a girl in school that he's kind of likes. And you see these little snippets of these South Asian folk tales, which kind of draw you out, but also draw you in, and hopefully they do a good task in kind of having this almost relief in some ways to kind of cut to, like we cut to commercial breaks
Yeah.
during some intense drama, but but they're all connected. So when you read the folktale, you understand why it's this one in particular is there in this part of the story. So it's not random, I promise.
No,
Um,
it's beautiful and it's strategic and it does exactly what you said it would do for readers. There's at one point in the book, um, Mo is talking about his love of folk tales, and like you said, he's trying to be a bad boy on the outside, yet there is this inner Mo that the reader gets to have a sneak peek into,
mhm.
which might be an unexpected about, a so-called bad boy who happens to love folk tales. So there's this juxtaposition of inside and outside, but he says at one point, right, that these stories, these folk tales, they help him imagine a different life where he's in control and he's the storyteller. And so I love how you really just outlined when you get to a part in the story that is difficult, it switches back and you can almost see him trying to regain control through that story, through those understandings. At least as a reader, that back and forth
Yeah.
was so powerful to me. I felt like I could get inside Mo even more because of the stories he was choosing to reveal to the reader at that point.
Good, good, because I was thinking, what if people are like, "This is too jarring. Why did we suddenly stop?" So
Yeah.
I tried to be very careful in that, it was a smooth transition, and it's telling something. Sometimes when something happens in your life, that's big, and your life, especially as a child, as a young person, as a youth, when something is happening that's too big for you to handle, you can kind of focus on it a little bit more, or analyze it or break it down a little bit more by taking a step back.
Yeah.
And so to me, these stories, they do that. They're kind of, and you read, well, he there's a story, but then he kind of will repeat a few parts of it, or calling somebody the same name as someone in the story. Well, you are like this person, or this person is like that person, or this situation is like that situation. So he is grappling with his own understanding as he's he becomes closer to not only everybody else but also his father in some ways, and as the story progresses, and tries to understand him a little bit better than he's always understood him. And those stories, I feel like they help in that as well.
Yeah. They do, and for me, every single one of them was brand new to me, and so I thoroughly enjoyed
Well,
those
yeah.
books.
Because they're South Asian. They
Right.
were new to me, to a lot of them. I mean, some of them, yes, I had heard, but I did a lot of research
Yeah.
because, just like here in Western European culture, which is what we kind of have in the US a lot of times as well, there are those fairy tales or folk tales that we know, but then you can still discover so many that you've never
Yes.
heard of before because there are so many. And so I had to do a deep dive, and there are some that are brand new to me as well. And I love that. I mean, and there's so many that did not get in this book, and now I'm like itching to put them somewhere else. And I'm like, now maybe the next 10 of my books will all have fairy tales. No, I won't. That will get boring. But, yeah, yeah, there's so many amazing stories that I'm excited to bring to this side of the world that may have never heard of them before.
Yeah, I really enjoyed them. Um, I think another theme that I really loved in the book that seemed to be something that helped Mo, that was soothing to Mo, that helped him work through all of the feelings inside of him was the power of art. And
Mhm.
I'd love for you to talk about that piece. Art. Mo discovers painting as a way to express his feelings and let some of that emotion out, which a lot of readers might be able to relate to. So I was hoping you could talk about that element. Is that something that has been important to you or that you have found benefit in? Is that another piece of you on the page, or is it just a piece of Mo?
It was not at all a piece of me. I am the total opposite of whatever artistic, paint-wise person. All my creativity is in words, not in paints or art at all. My daughter, though, is an artist, and she is very involved, in all kinds of art. She does sketching now more with pencils, but when she was younger, there was a lot of paint all over my house. And so, when you grow up when you have somebody, when your child is growing up with this passion, I think you as a parent become also kind of, you learn more than you ever thought you would about something that's not your own hobby.
Yeah.
But I've read a lot about art therapy, and he's not in any sort of organized like therapy as in this book, but to him it is. He is kind of able to able to just show his emotions and his feelings, like put them on the page in an ugly way in through this art, which no one's ever gonna see, and no one's gonna judge. And it's him. And he says at one point that this is like all of me, my ugly feelings on this canvas, and I don't know. I have been going and for many years have gone to just therapy, and the concept is the same, and so I feel like it can be helpful to anybody at any age, but it certainly does to him.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like you said, it's not about the product. It's just that process of getting something out on the page and no
Yeah.
one may ever see it, right? But it's that personal release that he so desperately needs a place to be able to work through all of those feelings that are going on inside him. I also wanted to talk about a piece that I thought was really important, and it's not a spoiler, but it's something at the this is where I get so frustrated. Like I just want to tell you something and then I forget that I don't want to spoil it for everybody else. But we've talked about this idea of the folk tales throughout the book. It's where he likes to go to feel in control, to be the storyteller, and eventually he learns, he tries desperately to not think of the monster, as you mentioned, and to reframe, tell a
Mhm.
different story of what's actually happening to his dad and what that means for his family. And there's one point of the book, and I won't say what it is, listeners, so that you can experience for yourself. But in that moment, the family is trying to change the narrative. And that part was so powerful. And I could just see this beautiful link of the stories he told himself to escape and to be in control
Mhm.
might be mixed with art, mixed with images, the way that helps him tell a new story as they move forward. And I just felt like your book had so many messages to help listeners maybe we're going through something like this to feel seen, to experience it, but also what hope there might be in on the other side in the future, whatever it is. And I just
Yeah.
I just loved that thread of hope that was there throughout.
That was very important for me. So I talk about this in the author's note, and If you've, read any blog posts about this or any other interviews, I try not to talk too much because it's very personal to me, but it is something that's there for everybody to know. I grew up like Mo. I my dad had a schizophrenia-like mental illness. It wasn't ever diagnosed, you know, s- specifically. I was growing up. He was growing up in Pakistan. I think he developed this illness before I was born. So this must have been the 60s or 70s, maybe 70s. And there was no awareness or understanding. They also grew up as immigrants to Pakistan from India and Bangladesh, so there was no resources financially. And he, we believe that maybe he had schizophrenia, maybe he had something similar to that. But this was my life mostly. There's a lot of things that happened to Mo in this book that did happen to me. Um, and there's some that didn't, and some symptoms that are more very related to schizophrenia that I've put in the book that my dad did not experience. Which again, mental illness is so varied. There's no one, um, you know, it's not like flu. If you have these, that means you have flu. Um, and I did not have any hope. Our family did not have any hope. There was nothing that, we could see as a path to something better, a better life. This was just a life. He was sadly not in control of himself and his emotions most of the time. And I grew up without that. I grew up like Mo, a very miserable and mad and angry person. And I don't want that for anybody else because there should be hope. But when you are in a situation like this, and especially as a child, you have no control, you have no power, you have no way of stepping out. And so for Mo, I wanted to have that because this is kind of, I felt as I was writing this book that I was rewriting my past. Um, and I wanted him to have somebody in this book. It is his aunt and his teachers and even his cousin, who's the same age as him, um, who are the people who can provide some kind of hope, some kind of way out of this mess that this whole family is in, and help them understand. I also grew up really, I mean, I really hated my dad. It's very sad now as an adult that I think about it, and I regret it so much. But as a child, I did not understand. I mean, I did not. I had no other emotional. I had no other feelings except bad ones, and I don't think any child should have that for their parents. So I wanted Mo to have that. You know, in writing we call this the character arc, and as a writer that you cannot have the main character not change in any way. So this was his change internally, where he gets to understand his dad better and gets to help him and be part of that change, which I never had. And so yeah, if you um as a reader, as a parent, as a teacher, as an educator, anybody as a grown up or a kid is going through something like this where you have someone in your life who is mentally unstable, understanding them is really key because I think even just knowing what's going on, especially when you're a child, can give you that hope and there's like a little bit of inkling, okay, if I can understand something, maybe I can also understand that there's a different way to do things,
Yeah. Yeah. And Mo is strong, right? I mean, the title we know is The Strongest Heart, and there is a particular class, an anatomy class, where I think some things come together for him as well. He learns about the heart. He learns about the purpose. He learns about the brain. He has these moments where he allows himself to think a little bit of a different story. And I've got lots of places in your book that are sticky noted all over,
Yeah.
things that touched me, or quotes, or all sorts of things. But the one that I keep coming back to, that the title is right in this quote, is "The strongest heart is the one that keeps beating." And I was hoping you could talk a little bit about that. It's on sticky notes in
Yeah.
2 places in my home now.
First of all, I will tell you that this title was not the original title, and it was very,
Oh,
very difficult to come up with this title because my original title, I think it changed several times. Which, if you don't know the behind the scenes that happens in publishing, this is very common. Many books, their original titles that the author thinks of are not the ones that end up for various reasons. Um, being the actual the final titles of the book. So this one was originally titled, and I loved it. I mean, honestly, I really loved it. It was called Anatomy of a Monster. And it was, related to the anatomy class, which is not really anatomy now, also because that's more high schoolish or college level. So we made it a biology class. Um, and there's a lot of talk about him calling his dad a monster in the book. But there's also this concern that a lot of readers and a lot of booksellers or librarians think of monsters in terms of like horror or
mhm.
fiction, which is more like supernatural. And so we decided that that was not maybe the right placement. Somebody who picks up the book might think it's something else and then be disappointed, or not, or maybe they're not into, like, I don't read horror at all, so I wouldn't pick up a really great book because it's got that on the cover. So we decided to change it. And then I don't remember what happened. There were a couple of different iterations, um and so this line, "The strongest heart is the one that's still beating," was not there in the original book, in the original manuscript. And then I wanted to think of how to weave in a strong title with a strong something that really, connects with the book. Because just having a random title that's got nothing to do with the story, I don't like that. There are books like that, but I don't like that. So yeah, so it's kind of a mixed message sometimes, where you say the strongest heart is the one that's still beating, meaning it could be like really weak, it could be faint, but it's still beating. So
Yeah.
ultimately, as Mo learns in his biology class, is that the job of the heart is a pump, to keep pumping blood and making sure that everything else in the body is doing what it needs to do because it's getting blood. And that's all. The anatomically incorrect version, as they talk about in one of their biology classes, which is, the heart being the source of love and emotion, that's incorrect. And so he, being this non emotional, or trying to be not an emotional person, wants to reject that idea. So it doesn't matter how strong the heart is, as long as it's doing its job and it's beating, which is the job of it as a pump. Um, there's hope that things will get better in the future. You
Yeah.
don't have to be this amazing person who's got everything right in their lives. And that's, I guess, that was his. That he takes comfort in that. That, he might be at his lowest point, which he is. There's several times in the book where he feels that he's at his lowest point, not knowing that, 20 pages later there will be an even lower point.
Yeah.
But his heart is still beating, and so that's enough.
Yeah. And for readers reading, that message comes through loud and clear for whatever the reader might be going through, whether it is related to something that Mo is going through or just something completely different. I think that's a universal message that comes through, and just touches the
Yeah.
reader however they need to feel it. I feel like it's there.
I tried. That's what I tried to do, because because my books, not just this book, but anything that I write is very specific. Say it's always a Pakistani American family, it's always a Muslim family. There's some things that are very much, any book of mine you'll pick up, you'll be like, okay, it's a book by Saadia, we know what we're gonna find. So I always am very careful and aware of the fact that I still have to make what I write have universal appeal. So even though somebody picks up knowing that I may not be of the same background as these characters, I may not have this one specific issue that these characters have, there are still these universal, issues that everyone goes through, regardless of age or gender or background or language or religion. And in this case, whether your dad has a mental illness or not. There are still these ideas and these themes that you can use for anything that you're going through in life that seems overwhelming. And that you feel powerless at any age to control, and what are some ways that you can work through them. And number one in this book was asking other people for help, which a
Mhm.
lot of times if we think, especially adolescents, I see that with my own kids. They often feel like, they need to do everything themselves because now they're older and they're in their preteens or their teens, and asking your mom or dad or somebody to help you is not, no, I can do it myself. um that's not always that's not always, um, right, and adults also do that. I saw that in my own family with my dad and everyone around him, my mom, my grandmother, my everybody just felt like, I feel like so much could have been different if there had been this culture of asking questions and helping somebody who was failing to do what they were supposed to do as a man, as a father, as a person, and just being more understanding. So,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, I agree.
Books just have so much power, right? I feel like as we're talking, Mo had his folk tales, and now readers have your book to do
Oh, thank
the
you.
same thing, right? To books plural is what I should.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, this is not a story that I hope that anyone would honestly need, but there is a need. There are millions and millions of people who are growing up with mental illness, or who have parents, or millions and millions. I did some research for a blog post about how many million there are just in America. Kids who have one or more mentally ill parent. And you know, when they go to school or they're with their friends, like I never told anybody. The way that I talk about it now, this is after years of therapy. I never ever said these words aloud. Even in my 20s or even in my 30s, like my dad has, you know, say schizophrenia or a bipolar or whatever he had. It was just not said because there's so much shame around
Yeah.
things. And you don't have to say it, but if you read a book and it makes you feel a little bit more hopeful, or a little bit more able to deal with your own inner demons, then I guess, we're here to write those books until there's no more need for them.
Yes. Would you say that's your hope for readers who pick up this book or your books, is to have perhaps that slightly different view, or that idea that there is hope, you can rewrite that narrative, you can change the story that you tell yourself? What is
Yeah,
your hope?
with all my books, not just this one. There's always this twofold goal for every book I write, because I this was not something I was doing forever, right? This is something that I started with a very intent. Writing books for children was I started with a very intentional way that I want to do something. I want to put these books out that are going to do these two things. One is so that somebody can see themselves, their own experience reflected, whatever situation or background you may be in. And in this case, in The Strongest Heart, you can see if you have a family life which is difficult, where you don't have control, whether there's any kind of abuse, whether it's emotional abuse or physical or anything. Um, you know, you're not alone. There is at least one person, even if they're fictional, who is going through that. Give you a little bit of comedic relief, give you a little bit of entertainment, and help you see a broader picture. Because I mean, when I was growing up, I thought I did not even realize my own siblings were also going through the same thing. There were at least everybody in my house was going through that. I thought I was alone in this. I thought this was the most horrible thing that ever happened to me. And if I had been able to read about it or talk about it, it would have made it a little bit easier for me. So definitely that is one goal. And then the other goal is, if you're not like that, maybe it can help you understand somebody else better. Because the number of people who don't still to this day and age not understand not appreciate, but really understand mental illness and how people are not in control when they are doing or saying things that may seem, we have this idea of saying you're mad or you're crazy or you're messed up or whatever. It's not their fault, and not and just changing that mindset so that you can deal with somebody else in a more humane and empathetic manner,
Yeah.
that can change the whole life of that person, or you. Maybe you can become a better person.
Yeah. And you
So,
touch upon that in the end in your story, like you say, you know what, it's not fair, but it is what it is, and we can change what we think or how we act around it, and that can make things better all around.
yeah, yeah, it's not fair, and as a kid, you're so into, be fairness and justice, and what's happening to me is not fair, and
Yeah.
I grew up like that too. I mean, that was my biggest refrain was like, "How is this fair to anybody? This is not fair to me." And, if everyone says my dad is not well, then of course it's not fair. So who is the one who's like responsible for this? And the answer is nobody. And sometimes, sadly, nobody's responsible for really bad things too,
Yeah.
which, as you get older, you realize so many truths. But when you are 10, 11, 12, 14, this is a really, really difficult concept to grasp.
Yeah.
And, maybe reading a book can help you grasp that concept. Maybe not. I don't know. But at least it's better than not having any understanding at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, for sure. I do hope that people who read this book, whether they're adults or kids, can come away with, like you said, wow, that was a good story, and I also got something out of it that I didn't
Yeah.
think about before.
Well, I did. My hand is
Good,
raised very, very high.
good.
Beautiful book. I loved it. I'm going to keep this one close for a long time. There's just some characters that get in that heart and you don't let them go for a while, and Mo is one of them for sure.
I'm glad. I'm glad. He was very different a character from any I've written before. It was very edgy and very just even the way that I wrote his voice was very different from what I've ever written before. So if you have read any of my books or a lot of my books and you know how I write, you will be still surprised because this the tone of this book and the voice of this book is very different and very casual and very edgy and very, teenagery, I don't know.
Yeah.
That's not a word, but,
I think
uh,
it's a word.
that's, different. So I do try, once you've written so much,
Yeah.
you risk being in this kind of rut where people kinda assume that, "Okay, we this is what she's gonna write. We already know her." So I try to kinda, surprise my readers sometimes and be like, "No, you don't know all of my talents yet."
Right. That's right. There's still much more inside.
There.
Thank you so much for coming onto the podcast to talk about this beautiful book. Before we wrap up, I want to ask two things. Number one, is there anything you're working on that perhaps you could give us a sneak peek into, even though The Strongest Heart is still so new? And then where can listeners find you online so that they can stay connected with you for those next books that are coming?
Yeah, lots of next books coming. There are definitely new Yasmin books, and if you're a fan of Yasmin, then hopefully you'll be excited by that. That's my longest running series. I'm very proud of it, and very happy with how all of you have embraced it. So there will be more this year, and then I have a newish chapter book series called Maria Khan, which is for say third grade. Maria Khan is in third grade and she's got a bunch of adventures. And their book 5 and 6 of those will be coming out this year. Maria Khan and the Disastrous Class Project and Maria Khan and the Abominable Ski Trip. So those are both coming out, one in spring and one in winter of this year. So that's a newish series, and chapter books are always kind of in demand, but there are a lot of chapter books that people don't know about. So I'm letting you know I have a whole series of chapter
Yeah.
books called Maria Khan out there. You
Yeah.
can reach me through my website, which is just my full name. As long as you spell it correctly, you'll get there, saadiafaruqi.com. And Instagram is the social media platform that I'm mostly at. um, I'm also on X, but not as active anymore. But Instagram is again at Saadia Faruqi. So just make sure that the spelling is right, and you'll find me there. I try to reply to DMs. I try to engage with my audience all the time. So happy to answer any questions or talk to you, any of you that way.
Wonderful. Well, I will put links to them in the show notes so that they don't have to spell and they can just click and get to it
Yes.
to find you.
That will
And
be good.
I'll also put links, of course, to the Strongest Heart in the show notes as well. Thank you again for coming on. This was such a wonderful conversation. I'm so grateful that I get to talk to you
Oh.
about the book and be involved in the launch of it. So thank
Well,
you
thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you for reading it and liking it and asking such great questions. I'm excited about the book. I'm also very nervous because, like I said, it is a very personal book to me,
Yeah.
story to me. So hopefully everybody will love it as much as you did. And thanks for having me on the show.
Oh, you're welcome. And listeners, thank you for listening to another episode of KidLit Love, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for listening to today's episode of the KidLit Love podcast. You'll find links to all the books, resources, and ideas mentioned in the show notes at alitlife.com. And if you want more, you might like to listen to my other podcast called Get Literate. It's a podcast that explores all things books and reading, notebooks and writing, and everything in between to build a life you love. One more thing. If you love what you listened to today, please take a moment to rate and review the podcast or take a screenshot of the episode and text it to a bookish friend. This helps the podcast grow and builds our bookish community of Kid Lit Love. Thanks for listening.